1. A cinematic 4K photorealistic close-up of an old upright piano in a dim, dusty room. The keys are yellowed, and the lighting is dramatic with deep shadows. 2. A wide-angle shot of a desolate school hallway with lockers painted in faded primary colors. The floor is polished concrete with long, distorted shadows and a faint, clinical atmosphere. 3. A high-angle, cinematic view of a single paper sun taped to a school wall, its edges curling. A dark, dried smear mars the cheerful drawing, lit by a flickering fluorescent light. 4. A close-up of a tactical vest where a flashlight rattles against metal. The scene is photorealistic, showing the texture of the fabric and the vibration of the gear in low light. 5. A cinematic portrait of a woman in tactical gear placing 2 fingers on a man's wrist in a gesture of silence. Her expression is one of intense focus and dread, 4K detail. 6. A detailed shot of a ceiling-mounted industrial speaker in a school hallway. Dust motes dance in the beam of a flashlight directed at the speaker mesh, cinematic 4K. 7. A photorealistic view of a music room door at the end of a long, dark corridor. The sign "Music Room" is slightly crooked, and the lighting is eerie and cold. 8. A wide shot of Sector 8 from a distance, showing concrete barricades, razor wire, and the skeletal remains of apartment blocks against a twilight sky. 9. A drone's eye view of a stadium and a tram depot surrounded by portable shipping container walls. The atmosphere is hazy and oppressive, cinematic 4K. 10. A close-up of a blue nylon bag sitting inside a dark closet. The lighting is soft and melancholic, highlighting the zipper and a small, worn handle. 11. A photorealistic image of a vintage inhaler resting on a wooden shelf next to a dusty rabbit plush toy. Soft, warm light suggests a memory of safety. 12. A cinematic wide shot of an empty city intersection where a lone figure stands with their head tilted at an unnatural angle, listening to the ground. 13. A montage-style image of flickering television screens in a dark shop window, each displaying frantic news headlines about a humanitarian emergency. 14. A close-up of an eye with a blown-wide pupil, the iris dark and reflecting a cold, clinical light. The skin around the eye is pale and graying, photorealistic 4K. 15. A cinematic shot of a person's hands gripping a metal shutter, the tendons straining and the knuckles white. The atmosphere is one of desperate, frantic energy. 16. A wide shot of the military perimeter at sunset. High-voltage lights illuminate rows of concrete, jersey barriers and coils of shining razor wire. 17. A detailed view of a large loudspeaker mounted on a concrete wall, its silhouette sharp against a darkening purple sky. It looks imposing and silent. 18. A photorealistic shot of an armored transport bus interior. The surfaces are scratched steel, and the lighting is a dim red emergency glow. 19. A cinematic portrait of a man named Ortiz, looking at a magazine for a rifle. His hands are weathered, and his wedding ring catches a glint of light. 20. A close-up of a paramedic named Lena, her face sharpened by exhaustion. She has trauma shears taped to her vest, and a faint haze of smoke surrounds her. 21. A photorealistic shot of a woman named Noor looking at a detailed map of city pipes. Her expression is grim, and the map is covered in red ink marks. 22. A wide shot of a heavy blast door made of shipping panels opening slowly. Warning lights on top blink in a rhythmic, menacing pattern. 23. A cinematic view of a paper cup skittering across a dry, empty street. The wind is the only presence, and the lighting is stark and high contrast. 24. A high-angle shot of a school lobby filled with green and blue lockers. A mural of cartoon fish is visible, though one section of the wall is cracked. 25. A wide shot of a school gym converted into a shelter. Neat rows of cots with folded blankets stretch into the darkness, illuminated by a single overhead light. 26. A close-up of a small sneaker with blinking lights lying abandoned under a cot. The lights are dim, casting a rhythmic red glow on the dusty floor. 27. A cinematic shot of a rooftop repeater cabinet with its panel pried open. Bundles of multicolored wires hang out like copper veins, photorealistic 4K. 28. A low-angle shot of a cafeteria hallway where two distorted silhouettes cast long, thin shadows against the floor tiles. The lighting is cold and blue. 29. A cinematic close-up of a woman's hand in hospital scrubs, a spoon duct-taped to her palm. The image focuses on the texture of the tape and the stillness of the hand. 30. A photorealistic view of a man with one shoe standing in a doorway, his face lost in shadow. The light from behind him creates a haunting rim light effect. 31. A wide-angle shot of a rooftop at sunset. Two figures work on a radio antenna while the city skyline behind them remains dark and silent. 4K. 32. A close-up of a radio earpiece emitting a soft green light. Faint static is represented by blurred, glowing particles in the air around it. 33. A cinematic shot of a cafeteria menu with a note scrawled on the back in frantic handwriting. The text, "Tell Eli don't come," is highlighted by a flashlight. 34. A photorealistic image of a stuffed rabbit tucked into the strap of a blue backpack. The fur is matted with dust, and the scene is lit with a soft, sad glow. 35. A wide shot of the team moving through a service lane at dusk. Their flashlights cup through the gloom, revealing trash and abandoned vehicles. 36. A cinematic view of 20 figures standing shoulder to shoulder in front of a pharmacy. They are all facing the wall in a silent, eerie formation. 37. A close-up of a city-issue weather alert speaker crackling with life. The metal housing is rusted, and the scene is set against a pitch-black sky. 38. A photorealistic image of a man softly rhythmic slamming his forehead against a metal shutter. The focus is on the repetitive motion and the cold metal texture. 39. A cinematic shot of the Municipal Archive Annex, a brutalist concrete building with tiny slit windows and a dark loading dock below grade. 40. A close-up of drag marks in the dust of a loading dock. Human shoe prints are mixed with bare footprints, lit by a sweeping beam of light. 41. A photorealistic shot of an abandoned field lab inside a basement. Specimen bags with barcodes are scattered across a folding table. 42. A cinematic view of a computer tablet in a charging cradle. The screen displays a video log of a woman in a lab gown with waveform sketches behind her. 43. A close-up of Dr. Anika Vale's face on a screen. Her expression is one of professional detachment crumbling into fear, 4K detail. 44. A wide shot of a network of pipes and copper service runs in a dark basement. Faint, thread-like filaments grow along the metal surfaces. 45. A cinematic shot of a speaker mounted in a basement corridor. The lighting is a deep, pulsing red, creating a sense of rhythmic vibration. 46. A photorealistic image of a man sitting against a concrete wall, his rifle resting on his lap. 3 words are smeared in dark pigment beside him. She sounds happy. 47. A close-up of gray-white filaments pulsing on a concrete seam. The texture is organic yet alien, illuminated by a passing flashlight beam. 48. A cinematic view through spider-cracked observation glass. A figure is pressed against the other side, their hands flat and pale against the pane. 49. A photorealistic shot of blood-printed hand shapes on a glass window. The lighting is clinical and cold, emphasizing the transparency of the glass. 50. A wide shot of a corridor where every speaker is active at once. The air seems to vibrate with the intensity of the sound, visualized by dust movement. 51. A cinematic view of a man in a lab coat with no jaw, his movements fluid and unnaturally fast as he climbs over obstacles. 52. A photorealistic shot of the team running through a maintenance hatch. The lighting is frantic, with shadows jumping across the walls. 53. A wide-angle shot of a flood control tunnel with ankle-deep water. The brickwork is old, and the pipes are covered in thick mats of filaments. 54. A close-up of a service board with a laminated map. A red circle is drawn around a district with the words, "Do not wake," scrawled next to it. 55. A cinematic shot of a woman handcuffed to a railing in a pump room. She is pale and feverish, her eyes fixed on the door with a haunted look. 56. a photorealistic image of a man's hand clenching a child's small coat. The knuckles are white, and the fabric is a faded, cheerful yellow. 57. A wide shot of an equipment corridor filled with spent shell casings and a snapped flashlight. The lighting is a rhythmic red emergency pulse. 58. A close-up of an orange triage marker tied to a pipe. On the back, the words, "IT copies the ones you'd follow," are written in bold ink. 59. A cinematic shot of a man sitting against a louvered wall in a vent chamber. He looks exhausted but lucid, a rifle resting beside him. 60. A photorealistic image of a woman's hand taking a rifle from a man. The lighting is soft and mournful, focusing on the contact between their hands. 61. A wide shot of a massive explosion in a basement pump room. Fire rolls through the chamber in a bright, flat sheet of orange and gold. 62. A cinematic view of a flood escape culvert opening onto a river road at dawn. The light is cool and blue, suggesting a somber end to the night. 63. A photorealistic shot of a man sitting in a hospital bed, his face covered in soot and his eyes staring blankly at a chirping monitor. 64. A wide shot of a city street 6 months later. A bus stop stands empty under a bright, cold streetlight at midnight. 65. A close-up of a weather speaker at a bus stop, its metal mesh rusted. The image is hyper-realistic, capturing the stillness of the night air. 66. A cinematic, 4K shot of a man standing alone under a streetlight, looking up at a speaker with an expression of profound realization. 67. A photorealistic view of a dark school hallway with a single paper sun reflecting in a puddle of water on the floor. 68. A wide shot of a drone patrolling a concrete wall at night. The drone's lights cast long, searching beams into the dark district below. 69. A cinematic close-up of a man's thumb running along the brass of a rifle round. The lighting is warm and golden, focusing on the texture of the metal. 70. A photorealistic image of a paramedic's vest, focusing on the scissors and the scent of antiseptic represented by a clean, sharp atmosphere. 71. A cinematic shot of a dark intersection where 3 people stand perfectly still, their shadows merging into one on the asphalt. 72. A wide shot of a shipping container wall with warning lights blinking. The scale of the wall is immense compared to a lone vehicle in the foreground. 73. A photorealistic view of a man's graying lips as he whispers a name. The lighting is harsh, highlighting the texture of his skin and the moisture on his breath. 74. A cinematic shot of a rooftop at night. A technician's tools are scattered around a glowing radio repeater, the city lights far in the distance. 75. A close-up of a cafeteria menu with a child's drawing on one side and a desperate note on the other. The lighting is warm but the subject is chilling. 76. A photorealistic shot of a narrow tunnel filled with filaments. The filaments seem to glow with a faint, bioluminescent light in the dark. 77. A cinematic wide shot of the basement lab. Negative pressure plastic sheets ripple in a phantom breeze, lit by a single swinging lamp. 78. A close-up of a waveform on a computer screen, the lines jagged and complex. The screen's glow reflects in a pair of safety goggles. 79. A cinematic view of a man's silhouette against a wall of fire. He is turning a large iron valve, his posture one of heroic sacrifice. 80. A photorealistic image of a clean-cut man in a suit holding a clipboard, his expression neutral and uncaring. The background is a sterile office. 81. A wide shot of a river road at sunrise. The fog is thick, and the silhouettes of rescuers are visible in the distance, 4K detail. 82. A cinematic close-up of a radio technician's headset resting on a table. A small green power light is the only source of illumination. 83. A photorealistic shot of an empty bus seat with a layer of dust and a single, forgotten glove. The lighting is cold and nostalgic. 84. A cinematic view of a city skyline at night, with one district completely dark. The contrast between the lit city and the dark zone is stark. 85. A close-up of a child's laughing mouth, but the image is slightly distorted as if seen through a glitchy video feed, cinematic 4K. 86. A photorealistic shot of a man's boots walking through shallow water in a tunnel. The ripples are perfectly captured in the dim light. 87. A cinematic wide shot of a courthouse plaza overgrown with weeds and littered with abandoned papers. The atmosphere is still and heavy. 88. A close-up of a hand reaching for a door handle, the light catching a thin layer of frost or condensation on the metal. 89. A photorealistic image of a man looking at a photo of a little girl in a blue dress. The photo is creased and worn, lit by a soft candle flame. 90. A cinematic shot of a ceiling fan spinning slowly in a darkened classroom. Shadows of the blades sweep across a dusty chalkboard. 91. A wide-angle shot of the city's underground pipes, looking like a vast, metallic nervous system. The lighting is industrial and cold. 92. A photorealistic view of a man's face as he hears a voice. His eyes widen, and a single tear tracks through the soot on his cheek. 93. A cinematic shot of a small, glowing red light on a speaker housing. The surrounding area is pitch black, making the light seem like a staring eye. 94. A photorealistic image of a woman's tactical glove pressing a record button on a device. The focus is on the texture of the glove and the red button. 95. A cinematic wide shot of a group of people standing in a circle in the middle of a street, all looking up at the same silent speaker. 96. A close-up of a chlorine flush valve being opened. Clear liquid gushes through a pipe, illuminated by a harsh, white industrial light. 97. A photorealistic shot of a man's wedding ring resting on a concrete floor next to a spent shell casing. The contrast is sharp and symbolic. 98. A cinematic view of a dark hallway where the walls are covered in thousands of tiny, vibrating filaments. The atmosphere is thick and oppressive. 99. A wide shot of a helicopter flying over Sector 8 at night, its spotlight scanning the empty streets like a giant, prying eye. 100. A photorealistic image of a man's hand tracing the letters on a municipal archive sign. The sign is made of heavy, cold brass. 101. A cinematic shot of a woman standing in front of a whiteboard covered in complex fungal diagrams and human anatomy sketches. 102. A close-up of a single drop of water falling into a still puddle in a dark basement. The ripples are perfectly concentric and photorealistic. 103. A cinematic view of a man sitting in the back of an armored bus, his face half lit by a passing streetlight outside the window. 104. A photorealistic shot of a pair of bolt cutters resting on a pipe map. The metal is scratched, and the map is stained with water. 105. A cinematic wide shot of a school cafeteria with hundreds of plastic cups scattered across the floor, all empty and still. 106. A close-up of a man's ear as he presses it against a metal door. The lighting is dim, focusing on the intensity of his listening. 107. A photorealistic image of a child's handprint in the dust of a window pane. Outside, the city is a blur of gray and brown. 108. A cinematic shot of a massive underground pump motor, its surface covered in rust and pulsing filaments. The scale is intimidating. 109. A wide-angle shot of a desolate shopping strip with a bakery sign hanging by a single wire. The lighting is the pale blue of pre-dawn. 110. A photorealistic close-up of a woman's eye reflecting a wall of fire. The colors are vibrant and the detail is hyper-sharp, 4K. 111. A cinematic shot of a man walking through a forest of hanging wires in a basement. The wires sway gently, casting moving shadows. 112. A photorealistic image of a service credential lying in the mud. The photo on the ID is of a man smiling in a different time. 113. A cinematic wide shot of a city bridge blocked by shipping containers and razor wire. The river below is dark and slow-moving. 114. A close-up of a man's fingers typing on a laptop with a cracked screen. The text on the screen is a series of connection lost errors. 115. A photorealistic shot of a woman's face through a respirator mask. The plastic is fogged, and her eyes are wide with fear. 116. A cinematic view of a group of people standing on a rooftop, looking out over the dark city. Their silhouettes are sharp against the stars. 117. A A close-up of a speaker cone vibrating intensely. Dust particles are launched off the surface by the force of the sound, photorealistic. 118. A photorealistic shot of a man's hand holding a blue medical inhaler. The lighting is clinical and cold, emphasizing the object's importance. 119. A cinematic wide shot of a tunnel where the ceiling has collapsed, revealing the city street above. Daylight spills into the darkness. 120. A close-up of a woman's lips mouthing the word, "don't." The lighting is high contrast, making the scene feel intimate and tense. 121. A photorealistic image of a heavy iron wheel on a gate. The metal is cold and wet, and the background is a blur of red emergency light. 122. A cinematic shot of a man's shadow falling across a map of the city. The shadow is long and distorted, suggesting a sense of doom. 123. A wide shot of a parking garage filled with abandoned cars, their doors open and their batteries dead. The atmosphere is hauntingly quiet. 124. A photorealistic close-up of a woman's hand holding a wrench. The metal is stained with black grime, and her grip is firm. 125. A cinematic view of a man's face as he looks at a child's toy. The lighting is soft and melancholic, capturing his internal grief. 126. A photorealistic shot of a concrete wall with thousands of tiny holes drilled into it. Each hole contains a small, hidden speaker. 127. A cinematic wide shot of a city park where the trees have been stripped of their leaves. The ground is covered in gray ash. 128. A close-up of a woman's tactical vest where a patch says, "Search and Rescue." The thread is frayed and the patch is dirty. 129. A photorealistic image of a man standing in a doorway, his body silhouetted by a bright, white light coming from the room beyond. 130. A cinematic shot of a long, narrow staircase leading down into total darkness. A single flashlight beam points toward the bottom. 131. A close-up of a man's pulse jumping in his neck. The lighting is harsh, highlighting the physical manifestation of his fear. 132. A photorealistic shot of a woman's hand placing a note under a heavy stone. The stone is covered in moss and the note is white. 133. A cinematic wide shot of a city street during a burn pit operation. Smoke fills the air, and the sun is a dim, orange disk. 134. A close-up of a woman's face as she looks through a pair of binoculars. The lenses reflect a desolate, empty apartment building. 135. A photorealistic image of a man's hand reaching for a light switch in a room filled with filaments. The filaments are creeping toward his hand. 136. A cinematic shot of a group of people sitting in silence in a dark room. The only light comes from a small, battery-operated radio. 137. A close-up of a man's eye as he looks through a peephole. On the other side, a distorted figure is standing perfectly still. 138. A photorealistic shot of a woman's hand holding a cigarette she never had time to finish. The ash is long and the smoke is thin. 139. A cinematic wide shot of a city square with a large, abandoned fountain in the center. The statues are covered in gray mold. 140. A close-up of a man's hand pressing a send button on a satellite phone. The screen says, "Searching for signal." 141. A photorealistic image of a woman's face as she listens to a recording of her own voice. Her expression is one of pure horror. 142. A cinematic shot of a man walking down a street where every window has been shattered. The glass crunches under his boots. 143. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a small, silver key. The key is attached to a keychain with a cartoon character on it. 144. A photorealistic shot of a city sewer pipe where the water is thick and black. Filaments are growing in dense clusters along the sides. 145. A cinematic wide shot of a military encampment at night. Tents are illuminated from within, and guards walk the perimeter. 146. A close-up of a man's hand holding a glass of water. The water is vibrating, creating small concentric ripples on the surface. 147. A photorealistic image of a woman's face as she stares at a computer monitor. The screen is filled with rows of binary code. 148. A cinematic shot of a man standing on a balcony, looking out over a city that has been reclaimed by nature and decay. 149. A close-up of a woman's hand touching a filament. The filament wraps around her finger like a thin, gray thread. 150. A photorealistic shot of a man's face as he screams, but no sound comes out. The scene is silent and the lighting is dramatic. 151. A cinematic wide shot of a city bridge at sunset. The structure is rusted and broken, and the sky is a deep, bloody red. 152. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a small, red flower. The flower is the only bright spot of color in a gray, desolate world. 153. A photorealistic image of a man's face as he looks into a mirror. His reflection is slightly distorted, as if he is seeing someone else. 154. A cinematic shot of a group of people walking through a dense fog. They are all holding onto a long rope to stay together. 155. A close-up of a woman's hand pressing a detonate button. The button is red and the surrounding panel is brushed steel. 156. A photorealistic shot of a city street where the pavement has been torn up by giant, underground roots. 157. A cinematic wide shot of a school gymnasium filled with empty beds. A single spotlight shines on a small, blue backpack in the center. 158. A close-up of a man's hand holding a compass. The needle is spinning wildly, unable to find north. 159. A photorealistic image of a woman's face as she looks at a map of the world. Large sections of the map have been crossed out in red. 160. A cinematic shot of a man standing on top of a concrete wall, looking out at the sunset. His silhouette is small against the vast sky. 161. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a small, metal locket. Inside the locket is a photo of a family smiling on a beach. 162. A photorealistic shot of a city street at night. The only light comes from a series of bioluminescent filaments growing on the buildings. 163. A cinematic wide shot of a massive underground chamber filled with hundreds of thousands of files and boxes. 164. A close-up of a man's hand holding a small, white pill. The lighting is clinical and cold, emphasizing the pill's importance. 165. A photorealistic image of a woman's face as she looks out a window. Outside, a swarm of drones is flying over the city. 166. A cinematic shot of a man walking through a corridor lined with glass cells. Each cell contains a figure standing in the dark. 167. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a small, handheld radio. The radio is emitting a series of rhythmic, low-frequency tones. 168. A photorealistic shot of a city street where the buildings are covered in a thick, gray-white fungus. 169. A cinematic wide shot of a massive explosion in the center of the city. The shockwave is visible in the clouds. 170. A close-up of a man's hand holding a small, gold coin. The coin is old and worn, and the lighting is soft and golden. 171. A photorealistic image of a woman's face as she looks into a microscope. The slide contains a sample of the gray filaments. 172. A cinematic shot of a man standing in a field of tall grass at night. The grass is swaying in the wind, and the moon is full. 173. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a small, crystal pendant. The pendant is glowing with a faint, blue light. 174. A photorealistic shot of a city street where every car is the same make and model. They are all parked in a perfect line. 175. A cinematic wide shot of a massive underground lake. The water is perfectly still, and the ceiling is covered in glowing filaments. 176. A close-up of a man's hand holding a small, wooden carving of a bird. The carving is detailed and the wood is dark. 177. A photorealistic image of a woman's face as she looks at a wall of television monitors. Each monitor shows a different empty city street. 178. A cinematic shot of a man walking through a library where all the books have been burnt. The air is thick with the smell of ash. 179. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a small, black stone. The stone is perfectly smooth and seems to absorb the light. 180. a photorealistic shot of a city street where the buildings are being slowly pulled into the ground by giant, underground roots. 181. A cinematic wide shot of a massive underground vault. The door is made of thick steel and is covered in intricate carvings. 182. A close-up of a man's hand holding a small, silver whistle. The lighting is dramatic, with deep shadows and bright highlights. 183. A photorealistic image of a woman's face as she looks at a star-filled sky. One star is much brighter than the others and is pulsing. 184. A cinematic shot of a man standing in the middle of a desert at night. The sand is white and the sky is a deep, dark blue. 185. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a small, glass vial. The vial contains a single, glowing filament. 186. A photorealistic shot of a city street where every building has been painted white. The lighting is bright and sterile. 187. A cinematic wide shot of a massive underground city. The buildings are made of stone and are lit by glowing filaments. 188. A close-up of a man's hand holding a small, bronze key. The key is old and is covered in strange, ancient symbols. 189. A photorealistic image of a woman's face as she looks into a dark tunnel. Her expression is one of grim determination. 190. A cinematic shot of a man walking through a forest where the trees are made of metal and the leaves are made of glass. 191. A close-up of a woman's hand holding a small, blue marble. The marble contains a tiny, swirling cloud inside it. 192. A photorealistic shot of a city street at night. A lone streetlight is flickering, and the shadows are dancing on the pavement. 193. A cinematic wide shot of the final scene. The man stands at the bus stop, looking at the speaker as a small, white paper sun blows past his feet in the wind.